Do you think that the feeling of being watched is real? Could it perhaps have evolved from millions of years of predator-prey interactions, for example? So this question, too, I feel like we could go on for hours and hours and hours. We have perception that we don't yet have names for. Like we do. And some of that is going to be combinatorial between the various senses, right? That we do have names for. Here's just a little anecdote. I love being in the forest at night. And I was talking to Toby about this. I went for a walk at night and I didn't take a headlamp and my phone was close to dying, although I had it with me. And mostly I was out in the open, but I went through the forest for a bit, and Toby caught up with me on his wheel once I was back in the open part. He's like, "Where were you? I couldn't find you." Like, "Oh, you were in the forest? That's creepy." And he said, "No, you don't have nighttime forest fear." And I was like, "Yeah, And he said, "Oh, well, on an island, maybe not so much." I'm like, "Yeah, mountain lions, maybe." He's like, "Oh, I'm not scared of mountain lions." I'm like, "Well, it's the people you got to worry about." He's like, "Oh, I'm not scared of the people." I'm like, "Well, then what? Like, what's the forest fear, right? Like, what is it that you're worried about?" But I had been walking in the forest. It was 9:45, so it was quite dark, and the moon, was still less than half full. But my eye had not used a light at all, so my eyes were pretty well adjusted. And there's plenty of life in these forests. And I heard something, and I was like, "Okay, what is that?" And then I felt something on my shoulder. Like, okay, I'm not gonna panic. There's no one here. Look behind me. And it was a branch of a tree that had just come, but probably something had run across and like lowered it, but because I walked past it and had not noticed it at all, and then it was sort of bouncing up and down, that had just tapped me on the shoulder. And I thought, as I turned around to look and assess, okay, what was that? That's funny. I didn't feel anything looking at me. It's like, what? Like, how would I have known that there was something looking at me? But we often, if we are very attuned to our surroundings, do have a sense of, are there eyes on me or are there not eyes on me? And I don't know to what degree that's actually accurate, but I do think that there is some accuracy in that. I do think that we can perceive attention in some ways that we don't exactly have names for.
So I have no doubt that there are things that we can sense that we don't have names for. I mean, vomer nasal organ stuff, for example, there's a complex story there.
Yeah, but no, in mammals it's turned off, Brett. Right. It's totally turned off,
and
right?
It's still there. So
yeah.
I don't think that's what this is. I want to, if this term doesn't exist already, let's coin it. Emergent perception.
I was going to say that actually.
It's the right term.
Yep.
So what I would say is, you don't know. Let's start here. The magic of being able to perceive your world and make sense of it involves a trick that you're not really aware of, which is throwing out virtually every piece of data that reaches your sensors. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you did not do this, your brain would fill up inside of minutes, right? You just have to throw out almost all of the data. So what that means is there's some very early filter, and then there's a bunch of filters that do the same job at different stages. There's an initial filter that throws out almost all of the data, and then that which gets through, because it stands a chance of being meaningful, gets filtered again and again and again. And then at some point, things reach what we call consciousness, right? That is your subjective awareness of what's in the room and all of that. That means that there are stages between the data never got to any processing because it was thrown out at my eye, to the data reached my conscious awareness and I processed it and thought, chair, right?
Yep.
All those stages in between have the potential to recover something, right? Yep. In fact, there's processing that goes on that says, is this piece of information worth passing up the line towards consciousness? And if the initial answer is no, but then a second piece of information arises that says, actually, no, there was something there.
And so make that across 7-ish senses, right? So if you include like temperature, temperature difference on your skin, which indicates airflow when there was no wind coming from there, therefore what was moving the air, and proprioception, like your sense of balance, like is there something that I am perceiving about, what other organisms are moving around me, and smell, and, taste not so much if you're like talking about moving, talking about I feel watched. But all of that, exactly what you said, and now apply that to all of the senses, and most of all of it coming in, you just discard before it ever reaches consciousness. And sometimes, three of the senses at that intermediate, usually discarded stage, come together in the same way. You're like, what am I perceiving?
Right.
Right. Like I feel like there are eyes on me now.
And sometimes it's spurious.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not. And so I would say, let's say that you are walking someplace that you are well familiar with. You've walked there 100 times, and you're generally there in the light, and you're primarily navigating by sight. You are also developing a record of the sonic environment, right? As you pass a barrier, that barrier blocks sound. I mean, even just putting my hand next to my ear, I can hear the room is radically altered, right? So the point is, I know where the sound cuts in. I know where I have a sonic view in this direction and where it's blocked to some extent. And I don't know that I know it, right? Yeah. And so the point is, if somebody were standing somewhere, they are blocking some sound. It might be that walking in a place that I know, seeing nothing that is unusual, but hearing a variation in the sonic environment triggers me to be more alert and actually allow more in.
So the prediction is that you will more accurately perceive being watched in an environment in with which you are familiar. This experience that I had in the forest the other night is a trail that I have been on, but rarely, like, only once or twice over many, many years. I think once before since we've moved up here. So it's not, and when you're talking about a natural environment as opposed to a built environment, it changes radically with the seasons, right? And with the weather conditions.
Yeah.
So that said, you might still have a model much less precise of actually there's a lot of understory here, and therefore there should be basically sound. I should just be hearing wind and rustling, except basically in the channel it's coming down through the trail, which is, there's ocean over there by a ways, and there should be a little bit of wind coming here, none of which needs to be conscious. Like there's no reason for people to be necessarily assessing this. Some of us do, but and if there's any place in that sort of surround that is blocked, even if there's not much sound at all.
Yeah.
But that's not an uninterrupted circle around me. Actually, it's like there's the channel of wind coming down the trail, and also there's what's that? Maybe it's a rock.
Right.
Right. But especially if like the whole is moving, but that's harder to track if you're also moving.
Yeah.
So all of this, it doesn't require, just as a snail doesn't have to do calculus to build its shell, right? Like we don't have to be conscious of all of this stuff. And indeed we are not, in order to have a sense of something is different than expected about this environment.
I will also say there's something, I find it fascinating to track how one learns to do what you and I do in tropical forest, right?
Yeah.
We love to see vertebrates, right?
Yeah.
Primarily mammals and birds, a certain number of
I like herps,
of reptiles and amphibians, but especially with respect to the mammals and birds, it is amazing how much of the task is auditory. It's very hard to search these environments visually. It happens that you sometimes see something move first, but almost always when I succeed in seeing something I'm really excited about, I heard it, and then I spent 5 minutes trying to figure out where the thing I heard was. And, if it's a monkey, it'll be, I heard a rustle, or I heard something fall from that tree and it sounded like it was knocked down, right? And then the question is there anything here moving that isn't explained by the overall wind or whatever? Right,
but it's like some plants have like a particular droop, and they'll do something very strange, like at a different frequency than everything else around them, which is constantly drawing
throw all that out. And
but then, also some organisms you can find by smell.
Yep.
Peccaries.
Peccaries, for example. Yeah. But my point is, okay, you and I have developed a skill that you ordinarily wouldn't have.
Right.
Finding monkeys with your ears first, then motion of plants, then monkey, right? It's unnatural, but it's learnable. The point, though, is that tells you something about an early clue. A monkey that's looking at you surely counts. If there's a sense for something's looking at me, a monkey counts, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So the point I would make is that if you didn't know what it sounds like when a monkey drops a piece of fruit out of a tree or poops in a tree or pees in a tree, that's one of the telltale signs.
Like, why is it raining right there?
Yeah, there's something up there. I don't know what.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what that stuff is, so your conscious mind isn't getting any report because it's just like a chaos of sounds and visual stimuli, you still heard something.
Yeah.
And one of the telltale signs of being watched is that something that was moving is now still. It's hiding. And so that gives you that creepy feeling of somewhere in here, something noticed me, and it's now not moving, and presumably
it can see me.
Right, it can see me, and I can't see it, and that is the very definition of what's being described here.
Yes, absolutely. Hey guys, that was a clip from our monthly private Q&A that you can get access to at my Heather Hying's Patreon. And you can also get access there to all of the past paid subscriber content. So please consider joining us there.
Did you mention that these private Q&As are the key to living a better life and living to tell the tale?
I forgot to do that. These private Q&As are in fact the key to living a better life and what?
Living to tell the tale.
Living to tell the tale. Go ahead, live to tell the tale. Join us there.
See ya.